in normal society, in everyday life, absolutely 100% inclusion. When it comes to sport, we have categories based on biology, and that's pretty much that.
When it comes to athletics participation, you have to compete in the biological sex that you were born. This is critical to protecting the integrity of competition in women's sports.
This report revealed that over 600 female athletes had lost over 890 medals across 29 sports to trans athletes. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, guys. So this report came out and revealed that obviously a huge number of medals have been lost by females to trans athletes in different sports, basically because the governing bodies of these sports or of these different organizations are not protecting women. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to read the article to you guys just so you guys get everything, because I know a lot of these articles maybe you guys wouldn't end up reading, but I think they're important because whether you realize it or not, this is actually a bigger deal than it appears to be on the surface. Like, I am on X. I know a lot of you aren't on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Don't go on. It is not a healthy place to be. I block a lot of people and I mute a lot of people, but I think it's important for me to be there because I make a lot of people mad. And it really is because I'll go after both sides, because I have no loyalty to either side when it comes to the activist. I do not like activists. I will always tell you that. By the end of this video, I will tell you why I don't like what the activists are doing on either side right now, but who I think really needs to be aware of what's going on and why I insist on doing things sometimes. It's because women, really, you need to know that the people that are claiming to speak for you are not going to get anything done. And I know some people are going to be mad about that. I don't care if they're your heroes. I don't care if you love these activists because they started off from a good place. Every activist I've ever met has started off from a good place. And then eventually what happens is they start to like the fame. And yeah, it's a minuscule amount of fame compared to actual fame, but they like the celebrity that they get. They start to like the money, and they also like being considered revolutionaries. And so I quite often, because I do pay attention to a lot of things with popular culture, especially when it pertains to LGBT, I do pay a lot of attention to these things because they really do affect the world that I live in. And so I think that a lot of women would feel that their activists are doing right by them and really trying to get things done. And I notice quite the opposite. And I call that out regularly on X. I will tag them. I have people block me sometimes because people know that even though on X, because I was never really on it that much, because for a long time I just kept getting banned all the time because I kept saying the wrong thing. And it used to be a lot more restrictive, but since Elon has bought it, it really has turned into a much more free space, which is a good and bad thing. Overall, it's a good thing because I am a free speech person, but it really has let a lot of the crazy spill out into the digital streets over there on X. So I'm going to tell you guys by the end of this video what I think you should do, ladies. And I'm not trying to mansplain anything to you, and I'm not trying to give you marching orders. I'm just going to tell you what I think you can do so that you can circumvent the people that are not doing right by you right now. Because you know these articles come out all the time that'll actually call out a problem, and that's for everybody. Whatever marginalized population you're from, these reports will come out all the time, and then everybody will talk about it for a day, and then everything will go back to the way it was, and then nobody cares about it again. So I'm going to tell you guys what I think you should do so that possibly this comes to an end sooner than the people that are making money off of it would want it to end. And before we go any further, I'm just going to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to leave a comment just to help me on the algorithm, just leave a good old-fashioned thank God it's Friday. How about we go with that one today? Unless you've got something. Some of you are pretty creative, and I will admit, you will make me laugh in these comments sometimes, but I am anxious to hear from you. So let's get into the story. So it's from the Daily Mail, and the headline of the article is, "The huge number of medals female athletes have lost to trans opponents allowed to compete against them is revealed in UN report highlighting women's loss of fair opportunity. And this just came out October 24th. So here we go. A report from the United Nations has revealed the huge number of medals female athletes have lost to trans opponents. The study, titled Violence Against Women and Girls in Sports, stated that policies implemented by international federations and national governing bodies had allowed athletes born male to compete in women's sporting categories. And just real quick, I think it's only certain categories because we live in a clique-based society. And if you notice, a lot of the categories that they'll allow trans athletes to perform in are the ones that aren't getting the most viewership, aren't getting the most attention. And so what they're trying to do is make sure that people will be talking about them and hopefully tune in. That's really the way I feel about it from what I've been able to observe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but women's powerlifting, it usually isn't making a lot of waves. It goes on to argue that athletes born male had gender-specific attributes such as higher strength, which were advantageous in certain sports and resulted in the loss of fair opportunity for biologically female competitors. Well, there's only one kind of female, and that's biologically, but I guess whatever. Reem Al-Salam, the UN Special Reporter on Violence Against Women and Girls, presented the findings of her report to the UN General Assembly earlier this month, and this included the incredibly high number of biologically female athletes who had lost medals to transgender athletes. It revealed that over 600 female athletes had lost over 890 medals across 29 sports. The paper didn't elaborate on at what sporting events the medals were won or over what time frame. Transgender athletes who have won gold medals in sporting events include Canadian cyclist Veronica Ivy, became the first transgender cycling champion when she won gold at the UCI Women's Masters Track Cycling World Championships. That's a mouthful. Another transgender athlete is the American swimmer Leah Thomas, who was the first transgender athlete to win the highest U.S. national college title when she swam for the University of Pennsylvania in 2022. Miss Al-Salam, a civil servant from Jordan, goes on to say that some sports federations mandate testosterone suppression for athletes in order to let them compete. However, she claims that not only might this approach harm the health of the athletes, they also retain a number of performance advantages in certain sports. The New York Post reported that Miss Al-Salam also called on the UN to provide stronger protections for women and girls in sport. Aside from the transgender issues, Miss Al-Salam also argued that women face other obstacles in sport. This includes social stereotypes, pervasive sexism, and limited access to training facilities. She said women and girls already have many odds stacked against them that impede their equal and effective participation in sports. In addition, their ability to play sport in conditions of safety, dignity, and fairness has been further eroded by the intrusion of males who identify as females in female-only sports and related spaces. During the Paris Olympics, a major gender eligibility row engulfed the women's boxing surrounding Algerian boxer Imani Khalif. Miss Khalif, who is biologically female and does not identify as transgender, sounds like the lawyers made them write that one. But Ms. Khalifa is biologically female and does not identify as transgender, went on to win a gold medal in women's boxing, but her road to the podium was a bumpy one filled with controversies. Before the Olympics, she had failed 2 gender eligibility tests administered by the International Boxing Association, IBA. However, Olympic officials, which no longer recognize the IBA, dismissed these as illegitimate and defended her participation. This did not prevent a row from breaking out over Ms. Khalif's participation, with celebrities such as J.K. Rowling and fellow female boxers voicing their opposition to her continued inclusion in the tournament. When she won the gold medal, beating China's Yang Liu, she said, "I am fully qualified to take part in the competition. I'm a woman like any other woman. I was born a woman, I lived a woman, I competed as a woman. There's no doubt about that." A handful of transgender men and women took part in the Paris Olympics this summer, but some, such as New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard, who was the first openly transgender athlete to compete in the Olympics when she debuted at Tokyo 2020, did not compete this year. And if you look at Laurel Hubbard, she looks like somebody's stepfather had to raise up off the couch to compete with the ladies powerlifters for Olympics. I wouldn't even say she's a handsome woman. So that's the story. And like I said, these stories will come and go. That's usually what happens. Nobody's going to do anything about them. They'll pretend pretend that they're going to, and then eventually it just fades, and then women have to continue to lose opportunities. And one of the reasons I think that this is one of the most important topics to really tackle as a society is because we all know that being an athlete has a short shelf life. Even if you're able to extend it out to its maximum, it still has a short shelf life. Plus, there are a lot of variables that could take you out of the game because things happen in sports. You could get a fracture, you could break a bone, you could just have a freak accident. There are so many ways that an athlete's career can end sooner than it was supposed to. So when you're working with that kind of window, it is very important that we try to come up with solutions to these kinds of things as quickly as possible. At least that's my opinion. Because these women are in some cases losing their entire careers because these opportunities are being taken away from them. And the reason that I come down on the women's rights activists is because right now women's rights activists are really making this push and trying to tell women, females, not to befriend in any way or be cool with trans people. Which, if we're talking about the far left, blue-haired social justice warrior, I'm a woman, the same as you're a woman type of trans person, I can understand how that wouldn't be who you'd want to mix with if you have women's rights at the top of your mind. I don't hang out with those kind of people because I know that they're all about trying to indoctrinate you and make you think their way. But if you notice down below in my comments when I cover stories like this, and if you notice down below in the comments when actual women are making posts about the different things that they're going through with the trans people that we all wonder if they're really trans people, like these athletes, every one of these athletes, I'll tell you, I don't buy them as being an actual trans person. Do I think they're going through the motions? Do I think they're going through the steps? Yeah, to a certain degree, I do. But sometimes you don't even know that. Like I did the story about Veronica Dick Meat Garcia, who was a high school student who was running on the women's track team. And according to their rules, they weren't allowed to ask her if she was actually on hormones or not to level the playing field when it came to her competing against the girls. And she was smoking people. So when you don't even have those safeguards in place, I really don't buy a lot of these people as actually being trans. I think they went from being mediocre in men's sports to being exceptional in women's sports. And I think they got addicted to that feeling. But when it comes to transgender, I would not tell you ladies to go out and make friends with every transgender you can get your hands on. If you happen to meet a transgender person that's cool, then I guess. But what I would say is that right now, transsexual is really getting tired of transgender and the trans activist in general, because the transgender and the trans activist are making it so that transsexuals lose rights. So what I was trying to mention is, if you look below in the comments, for example, in the video that I did yesterday about the naked man in the women's spa, look in the comments of those videos. You'll see there are several transsexuals in the comments that are like, I'm a transsexual and I would never put a woman in this uncomfortable position. They were saying the same things that I told you guys about them having body dysmorphia and the idea of being nude in a public space just really being too much for them to handle. So they would never put themselves, or you for that matter, in that position. I've been telling you guys, this is not what transsexuals are about. It really isn't. So what I'm saying is, make your voices heard as much as you possibly can without losing your job, without suffering consequence. I'm not asking you to dedicate your life to activism. I'm not asking you to do anything that's going to put you in a financial position that you can't be in right now, as far as if they go after you and you can possibly lose your job. Stay chill for right now. People like me will be out there speaking out. Remember that Christmas is coming up. You got kids, you got a husband, maybe you're single and you just want to buy a bunch of stuff for you. So don't do anything rash that's going to make you lose your financial stability. But as much as you can, do be vocal about the fact that you don't feel like males should have a place in female sports. Be as respectful as you can about it, because like I said, you don't want to lose your job. And I can tell you from the way that I've been dealing with these people on Twitter, or I should say the way that they've been dealing with me, these people will try to ruin your life. I know they want to do it with me, but I'm not even doing the road right now. What are you going to do? Get me fired from my apartment? It's highly unlikely. As long as I'm not doing anything to break my lease, they ain't going to kick me out anyway. These people, though, they will try to go after your life. And so I would recommend, in general, be as respectful as you can about it, because you don't want to come off as discriminatory. So even though some people will encourage you to be like, it's a man and no matter what, it's going to be a man. And okay, if you want to do that, you can do that, but it's just going to make you look discriminatory, and you really need to come off the right way so that this actually gets done. So be as respectful as you can when you're entering the discourse. But at the same time, do be very clear about where you stand. Also, I say be respectful, because if you go at it the they're a man way, it might make transsexual people, who I know are very soon going to start speaking out more and more against this stuff, which is going to benefit the women, and you don't want to make them feel like you hate them too. Because sometimes when we make blanket statements, the shrapnel will end up discouraging people that otherwise would help you out by voicing their opinions and being on your side from continuing to do that, because they get like, okay, well, no matter what I do, they're not going to like me, they're not going to respect me even, so I might as well just keep my mouth shut and make sure that I'm good. But if you have a chance, or you know any, befriend an actual transsexual, and I think you'll find that they're really not trying to take over the space of being women. And that is what bothers me with a lot of the activists, because a lot of the activists want to stoke fear right now. And like I said, I've called them out on X because that's where a lot of the women's rights activists are. I'll do a whole video on the one that I think is probably the most toxic right now. But when they're telling you not to get along with these people and not to treat these people with respect, I don't see how that's at all productive, because what really needs to happen is the trans women and the women need to get together and go after the common enemy, which is the AGPs, the transgenders, and definitely the trans-trenders. That's what needs to happen, because transsexuals don't want to be in your guys' sports in the first place. So even though these trans rights activists will act like they're fighting for trans people in general, the transsexuals are not down with that. Also, the reason that you befriend the transsexuals is because the transsexuals are the ones that are actually dealing with gender dysphoria and the most likely to be able to make any kind of case about real discrimination. So if you have them on your side and they're saying that no, they don't consider this to be discrimination, they actually do agree that biologically there is a difference between a male and a female, even if they've been on hormones and had surgeries, and so they do have no business competing against women. So that means that the transgenders also shouldn't be competing against women, and then you start a groundswell, and you don't even have to do anything to do it, because it's all going to start taking care of itself, because like I said, everybody's getting tired of it. And the trans rights activists, they are horrible representation for the trans community, and transsexuals actually do get that and are really starting to see that now. It wasn't that they didn't see it before, it was just a matter of they had to keep their mouth shut because they didn't want to lose their job, and also because they always figured it didn't affect them. It was sort of like, okay, well, they're going to be out making a mess of themselves, and I'm okay just doing what I'm doing and living my life. But now what the trans rights activists are doing has started to erode at all of our rights. So that means transsexuals are getting upset about it, the gays are upset about it, the lesbians are upset about it. So the more of us that are speaking out about it, the more of us that are actually willing to be vocal about it, the better off that we'll be, and the more likely we are to make this change happen even sooner. Because if we all get together and just start boycotting anything that is allowing males to compete in female sports, that's going to be the best way for us to actually flex our muscle, because then we can just say, yeah, we're not watching it, we're not paying for it, we're not contributing to it in any way. That'll make the sponsors start to pull out, that'll make the governing bodies start to really respond, because that's what they're all the most likely to respond to, is money. And when you're talking about a lot of these sports, they're not making a lot of money to begin with. So you pull the sponsorship from them, nobody's making money, and that's where the actual change will happen. So you don't got to be best friends with the transsexual, but I would recommend keeping in mind that they could be very important allies in this particular fight. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I am anxious to hear from you. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.